Hey guys, welcome to Tech Crew. So if you've ever been interested in trying out Linux, but maybe you just didn't want to try it on your actual system and you didn't want to replace Windows, or maybe you didn't even want to dual boot it, today I'm going to show you guys how you can actually try Linux in a virtual machine inside of Windows 10. So there's a little bit of a more of a complicated type of video. It's not like really difficult, but it will take a little bit of time. So the first step is to actually install the virtual machine, the software that we're going to be using for the virtual machine. So the software that we're going to be using is called VMware. So you can just go ahead and search for VMware on Google and just go ahead and download that. So as you can see in the video, I'm showing you guys how to download it. And this is basically the base of where we're going to run the virtual machine. It's going to be responsible for basically taking care of everything, and it's basically just going to act like the spot to actually access the Linux operating system. So this is what we're going to be using as like the gateway to it. So this is obviously the first step, and it's not really difficult to install this, and later on I'll show you guys how you can actually get the rest. So once you've actually got it downloaded, you can just go ahead and open it. This part will take a little bit of time to actually install, as it's not really the biggest application, but it has a few things to set up, so it will take a little bit of time to install, probably around 3 to 5 minutes. So just let it take its time and install. Now once it opens, you can just go ahead and click next once it's on the welcome screen, and you can read through the license agreement if you'd like to do so, and then accept it. Here you can choose what you want. I'm just going to leave it at the default settings and the default location, and I'm just going to disable product updates because I don't really need those. And then here you can also decide where you want the shortcuts to be. Once you've done that, go ahead and click install, and this part's going to take a little bit, so depending on your system, it might take a little bit longer or a little bit less, so just let this part go, be patient with it, and just don't close it, otherwise you'll have to restart. So just let it take its time and you should be good to go. After this, basically what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be getting the OS that we want. So if you don't already know, Linux has many different options in terms of distros. So there's many different distributions of Linux, and because it's open source, many different people have actually developed like operating systems based on Linux that look different or maybe work a little bit different, but really underneath they're all Linux. So you need to find out which one that you actually want to use. So in today's video, we're going to be using Ubuntu, and that's the one that most people know of. It's the most common. I think when people think Linux, it's like the first one that they think of. So that's the one we're going to be doing, but in most cases you should be able to use any one of them. You'll be able to see later on in the video that VMware actually supports Ubuntu, and a few of them that it supports is a little bit easier to work with, and some that don't support it aren't as easy, but they're still fairly easy and it's not too difficult to set it up. So once you've got VMware installed, you want to go ahead and search for your operating system that you're going to use. So as we're using Ubuntu, you want to go ahead and just search for Ubuntu on Google. And once you're over here, you can just read about some information about Ubuntu and just kind of like more information about it. And once you've basically read through that, you can go ahead to the top and click download, and just download the Ubuntu desktop version. Just choose the latest version that's available. As long as you have the latest version of VMware and the latest version of Ubuntu, you should be good to go and it should just work. So in my case, it didn't actually automatically start downloading, so just click the download now button that's right there. And this part will actually take a little bit of time, so depending on your internet speed, it will take a little bit of time to actually install this. So what I'm gonna do with this part is I'm actually gonna go ahead and put this on my desktop, so you can actually set where you want this to be. This is basically like the installation file. So if you've ever installed Windows on a new system and maybe you're using a USB, or even if you use an older CD, you use a .iso file. So in this case, that's what we're going to be doing, and VMware is actually going to emulate this .iso file into the CD drive of our Linux operating system. So that might seem a little bit complicated, but that's basically how it does it. So it just takes this file. So set this file where you want it to be. You can delete this file later on once you've actually installed Ubuntu, and I find it easiest just to keep it on the desktop, and then later on you can get rid of it, or you can just keep it in your downloads folder wherever. But if you do ever need to reinstall Ubuntu, you can just go ahead, get it, and then that's how you would do it in that case. As obviously with a virtual machine, the benefit of it is that it can easily be shut down and stuff, and it's not running on your actual operating system. It's like in a virtual machine. That's the whole point of it. So it really is amazing that you can just have it running in the virtual machine. So as you can see, we now have this folder with the actual .iso file. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and open up VMware. Inside of VMware, you want to click create a new virtual machine. Over here where it says installer disk image file, you want to go ahead and select that .iso file that we had just downloaded. Now here, because this does support like a faster method, it allows you to personalize your Linux operating system beforehand. So just go ahead and choose your details that you'd like to choose. And once you've done that, on the next step, you can actually choose where you want to locate it. So this is kind of like the part where you want to make sure you locate it in a spot where you know where it is. Because if something does happen or you want to change something manually, you can do so. So I'm just going to choose it right in that same Linux folder. Here, I recommend storing it as a single file, as it's just going to be a little bit easier to manage. And if you just want to super easily delete it in the future, you could just delete one single file, so it's a lot easier to manage with. And here, once you're here, it'll basically tell your hardware system specs that it's basically assigned to the virtual machine. Now here, where it says memory, you want to decide how much memory you want to give the virtual machine. So in my case, I have 16 gigs of memory on my laptop, so I'm going to go ahead and give it around 6.5 gigs. So just depending on how much memory you have, you want to just allocate enough that whatever you're trying to do in the virtual machine would be enough. And on processor, so depending on how many cores you have on your CPU, you can actually choose how many you want. So I have a 4-core CPU, so I'm just going to use 2 cores, which leaves 2 cores for the operating system and 2 for the virtual machine. Once you've done that and choosing everything, just click finish. And this part will take a little bit of while. I've sped up stuff through here, but when you actually do it, you'll have to be patient at this part because it can take a little bit of time to just go through this whole installation part. So once this comes up, you'll need to install this later, but it will actually, because we're using Ubuntu and it has the basically auto install feature with VMware, it'll actually install it by itself later on during the setup. So we don't really have to worry about VMware tools, but that is very important to this. So we're just gonna get that, basically close it for now and just let the operating system install. So after some time, you'll see that it'll actually get to this point. And once you go down, as you can see, it's already basically not installed the VMware tools. So we have got through like the first setup point where it basically unpacks all the files. But as it starts, so once it basically finishes this loading over here, it'll actually get through all that. So here you can actually see that I'm showing you guys the display settings. Later on, you might want to change the display settings depending on what you want. But after installing VMware tools, it should go to a higher resolution and you should be able to actually full screen the virtual machine. And you can actually use it kind of as if it's just running on your system. You might not get as great performance as running it locally, but in the case of virtual machine, if you just want to test something, it is really cool and amazing that you can do this. So this part will just take some time. You just have to patiently wait here. And basically at this point, it's going to boot into the operating system and complete the installation. So you just have to be patient with it here. It's going to take a little bit of time, but just let it go and it'll be done pretty quickly. For me, it took about 20 to 25 minutes to do the complete installation, so it's not too long. But yeah, that's basically it. So now you can see that it's basically on the Ubuntu operating system. And basically it will take a little bit of time to load. Depending on your system, it might load it quicker, but on the first load, it will take longer. You have to be patient, like I've said. And a lot of it does contain being patient, because it can take time with something like this. And the other advantage to something like a virtual machine like VMware is that you can also use it to install stuff like Windows if you want it in the future. So now, as you can see, we are actually in the operating system. So if you go down to File and then Manage, you'll see that VMware Tools is now installed. So if you have that installed, you can just go ahead and set it to full screen. And on the corner, you can go ahead and click that and also get rid of the top bar. So it basically looks like you're right in the Ubuntu operating system. And at this point, you're basically in the operating system. You can use it just how you would locally use like a Ubuntu operating system. And yeah, so I hope you guys liked today's video on how to use Linux on a virtual machine. Today we use VMware, so yeah, I hope you guys liked today's video. And yeah, that's it for today's video.